You own a house. That single sentence changes how your brain works. Not your income, not your skills, not even your freedom. It changes your identity. And that identity is the first reason most homeowners become house poor without even realizing it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you buy a home, your brain stops thinking like an operator and starts thinking like an owner. That shift feels harmless, but it's not. Because owners protect feelings while operators protect cash flow. Homeowners get emotionally bonded to their house, and emotion kills financial clarity. This is the first and most important point. If you miss this, nothing else will make sense. Your brain assigns a symbolic value to ownership. Words like stability, success, and security feel so good that they override basic math. The monthly mortgage becomes manageable. Property tax becomes normal. Maintenance just becomes part of life. But here's what your brain conveniently ignores. None of these costs create income. They only consume it. And yet, because the house feels like progress, your mind refuses to label the situation honestly. This is called emotional accounting. Instead of asking, is this improving my financial position? Your brain asks, does this make me feel established? That's a dangerous question because feelings don't pay the bills. Cash flow does. Now let's watch how this plays out in real life. A homeowner's income stays the same, but their fixed expenses rise permanently. Not temporarily, permanently. The mortgage locks you in. Property tax goes up. Insurance adjusts upward. Utilities scale with the size of your house. And repairs don't ask for permission. But because none of these things hit you all at once, your brain doesn't register the danger. It just registers familiarity. Humans are terrible at detecting slow financial leaks. We're wired to react to sudden threats, not gradual ones. So instead of panicking, homeowners adapt. They cut back on travel. They delay saving. They reduce their own flexibility. They don't say, I'm struggling. They say, things are just a little tight right now. But that phrase hides the reality. Tight implies it's temporary. Being house poor is structural. And this is where the psychological trap gets even deeper. Because selling the house feels like failure, not financially, but emotionally. So even when the math is bad, people double down. They justify it, they rationalize it, they defend the decision. The house becomes untouchable. At that moment, the homeowner is no longer making financial decisions. They're protecting their identity, and identity is expensive. Now let us talk about the second mechanism that locks people into this situation, and this one is even more dangerous because it doesn't feel like a mistake at all. It feels like responsibility. This is point 2, and it's the reason house-poor homeowners stay stuck for decades. After buying a home, people unconsciously shift their risk tolerance, but only in one direction. They become conservative where growth is required and reckless where caution is needed. What does that mean? They stop taking career risks. They stop exploring moves to new cities. They stop looking for ways to expand their income. Why? Because the house demands certainty. A fixed payment requires a predictable paycheck, and a predictable paycheck discourages bold moves. So homeowners trade their potential upside for a feeling of stability without even realizing it. They don't say, I can't afford to take this risk. They say, I have responsibilities now. That sounds mature, but it isn't. It's fear dressed up as responsibility. Meanwhile, they take on massive hidden risks by concentrating their wealth into a single, illiquid asset. One location, one market, one property. If that area declines, they're stuck. If expenses rise, they just have to absorb it. If their income drops, the pressure multiplies. This is concentration risk, and most homeowners never see it coming. Why? Because society praises ownership, not liquidity. Nobody applauds you for having cash reserves. Nobody celebrates your flexibility. But those are the things that create real financial power. Now here's the cruel irony. The same homeowner who avoids a career move because it feels risky will ignore thousands of dollars in annual house-related losses because they feel normal. That's psychological inconsistency. And it's why being house poor persists even among intelligent people. Smart people are not immune to bad frameworks. In fact, they're often better at justifying them. So they say things like, well, at least I'm not paying rent, or real estate always goes up, or I'm building equity. Each of those statements sounds logical, but none of them address cash flow. Equity doesn't pay for your groceries. Appreciation doesn't reduce your stress. And ownership doesn't guarantee freedom. Liquidity does. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. Many homeowners could be financially ahead, not behind, if they treated housing as a tool, not a trophy. But trophies are protected. Tools are optimized. And optimization requires honesty. If this is making you feel uncomfortable, good. That means your brain is trying to defend an identity instead of analyzing a system. In our next video, we'll dive into how the real damage becomes visible, not just in expenses, but in opportunity cost. That's where most homeowners lose far more money than they ever realize. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.
Your house doesn't just cost you money. That's obvious. What most homeowners never see is what it quietly steals instead: opportunity. This is where house poverty becomes lethal, not to your bank account, but to your future. Here's the psychological trick your brain plays. It treats visible costs as real and invisible losses as imaginary. Mortgage? Real. Property tax? Real. Repair bill? Painfully real. But the money you could have made if you weren't locked in? Your brain ignores it. And that blind spot is the key. Let's be precise. Every major financial win in life requires optionality. The ability to move, the ability to wait, the ability to say no, the ability to take asymmetric risks. Homeownership, when misaligned with income, kills optionality. Not loudly, quietly. A homeowner doesn't wake up and think, "I can't pursue better opportunities." They think, "Now is not the right time." That sentence has destroyed more potential than failure ever did, because not the right time feels rational. It isn't. It's constraint disguised as patience. Here's how the trap forms. The house creates fixed obligations. Fixed obligations demand predictable income. Predictable income discourages experimentation. So people stop making moves that don't guarantee immediate stability. They don't change industries. They don't relocate for higher upside. They don't invest time in uncertain but scalable paths. Not because they lack ambition, but because they lack a margin for error. And margin for error is where growth lives. Now notice the contradiction. The same person who avoids career risk because it feels dangerous is already carrying the largest leverage bet of their life, the house. That's not caution. That's misallocated fear. The risk wasn't avoided. It was concentrated. One asset, one market, one job feeding it. That's a fragile system. But the human brain hates admitting fragility after commitment. This is called escalation of commitment. Once you've paid the down payment, moved in, decorated, settled, walking away feels psychologically expensive. So instead of asking, "Is this setup optimal?" people ask, "How do I survive inside it?" That shift is subtle and devastating, because survival thinking shrinks time horizons. People stop thinking in 10-year outcomes. They think in monthly survival cycles. And that's when house poverty becomes permanent. Let's talk numbers, not hypothetical ones. A homeowner may build equity on paper while losing real wealth in opportunity cost. Money tied up in down payments, renovations, and emergency buffers for the house is money that can't be deployed elsewhere. It can't compound. It can't pivot. It can't chase upside. It just sits there locked. And unlocked capital is dead capital. Because equity feels like progress, the loss doesn't register emotionally. The house appreciates slowly. The missed opportunities compound exponentially. That gap is invisible until it's too late. By the time homeowners realize it, their peers who optimized flexibility are years ahead. Not smarter, not luckier, just less trapped. Now, here's the part people hate hearing. House poverty isn't about income level. It's about income elasticity. Two people earning the same amount can have completely different financial trajectories. One has low fixed costs and high flexibility. The other has high fixed costs and zero maneuverability. Guess who survives shocks better? Job loss, health issues, market downturns. The flexible one doesn't panic. The house poor one does? Because panic isn't about fear, it's about lack of options. And nothing removes options faster than fixed expenses that don't scale down. Rent can be renegotiated. A house cannot. That rigidity forces people into defensive behavior. They avoid negotiation at work. They tolerate bad bosses. They accept mediocre raises. Not because they're weak, because the house requires obedience. This is the unspoken cost of homeownership no one warns you about. It doesn't just take money. It reshapes behavior, slowly, quietly, permanently. Society reinforces it. Homeowners are praised as responsible. Renters are mocked as unstable. So, people stay stuck longer than they should to protect social perception. That's ego tax. An ego tax is far more expensive than rent. Now pause and think carefully. If an asset reduces your ability to move, limits your career upside, increases stress, and forces conservative choices, is it really an asset? Or is it a liability wearing a respectable costume? That question makes people uncomfortable because it threatens identity. And whenever identity is threatened, logic shuts down. So homeowners don't analyze outcomes. They defend decisions. They say things like, "I'm playing the long game. This is how wealth is built. It'll be worth it later." Sometimes that's true. Often it's not. The difference isn't optimism, it's alignment. A house amplifies whatever financial structure you already have. If your income is strong and scalable, the house is leverage. If your income is tight and linear, the house is a cage. Most people buy before they're ready, not financially, but psychologically. They confuse stability with progress. They're not the same. And here's the brutal truth. The cost of house poverty is not paid in dollars. It's paid in years. Years of postponed growth. By the time the house finally makes sense, time is already gone. In the next video, we'll expose the biggest illusion homeowners cling to, the one that makes all of this feel justified. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.
Have you ever heard the saying, "Time heals all wounds"? Well, in real estate, that can be a dangerous lie. There's a powerful illusion that keeps millions of homeowners trapped, and it's the belief that time automatically fixes a bad financial structure. This is the most dangerous trap of all. Most people think if they just hold on long enough, appreciation will rescue them, equity will save them, and patience will turn all that pressure into a huge payoff. This belief feels so rational because we hear it everywhere. Real estate always goes up. Just wait it out. You only lose if you sell. But here's the harsh truth. Time doesn't fix a structural problem. It just exposes it. If your cash flow is weak month after month, time doesn't help you. It suffocates you slowly. Our brains love long timelines because they let us delay accountability. When the consequences feel far away, we lose our sense of urgency. So, homeowners put up with years of stress, all for the promise of a future win. This is what I call deferred hope, and it's addictive. It lets people endure situations they really should be changing. Let's talk about the equity myth for a second. Equity is not income, it's not cash in your pocket, it's not freedom. Equity is just a number on a piece of paper. It only becomes real when you sell or refinance, and both of those actions come with their own costs, risks, and consequences. Yet so many homeowners mentally spend this imaginary equity long before it's real. They feel richer because a number on Zillow went up, but they act poorer because their actual cash flow didn't change at all. This is the illusion of wealth, and illusions can be very comforting. Here's what really happens over time. Maintenance costs go up. Property taxes get adjusted upwards. Insurance premiums rise. Neighborhoods change. All while your income often grows much slower than you expected. The gap between your obligations and your financial flexibility just gets wider and wider. But because the house's value on paper is going up, the pain is tolerated. People say, well, at least my house went up in value. That statement hides a much deeper truth. The house's value went up, but your quality of life didn't. This brings us to a critical psychological error. Homeowners compare themselves to renters, not to a better version of themselves. They're not asking, what could I have built with all this capital and freedom? Instead, they ask, am I better off than someone paying rent? That's a low bar. It's a defensive comparison, not an aspirational one. This is how feeling stuck starts to feel like success. And society reinforces this. Owning a home is framed as winning, while questioning that ownership is framed as failure. So people just stop questioning, even when they feel trapped, even when the stress is constant. They tell themselves this is just normal adulthood. It's not. It's the normalization of being constrained. Now let's talk about leverage, because this is where the danger really gets amplified. A house is leverage time. You're borrowing from your future income to pay for security today. That's not always bad, but it becomes a huge problem when your future income isn't flexible enough to handle life surprises. Most homeowners underestimate just how fragile their income really is. Jobs get lost, industries change, health issues pop up, but the mortgage doesn't care about any of that. So we use optimism as a strategy. We assume future raises, future bonuses, future stability. We believe tomorrow will be just like today, only slightly better, but history shows us that's rarely the case. And when those projections fail, the stress becomes chronic. Chronic stress narrows your thinking, and narrow thinking prevents you from making the changes you need to make. That's how people stay stuck way longer than they should. Let's face the hardest truth of all. Many homeowners aren't actually building wealth. They're just delaying regret. They endure all this pressure now in exchange for a story that it will all pay off later. Sometimes it does. But often it doesn't pay off nearly enough to justify the years of sacrifice. And once you've invested so much time, money, and emotion, walking away feels impossible. This is the sunk cost trap. The more you've put in, the harder it is to admit it was the wrong path. So instead of redesigning their lives, people just cope. They normalize their anxiety, they suppress their ambitions, they trade excitement for predictability, and they call it being mature. That isn't maturity. That's surrender. If an asset requires you to sacrifice your growth, your flexibility, and your peace of mind for years just for an asterisk, maybe asterisk win down the road, it's not the right asset for you. Building wealth requires discipline, yes, but it shouldn't require constant, crushing pressure. That pressure is a signal of a deep imbalance. And the most telling sign of that imbalance is this: you can't even imagine starting over, even if starting over might be the better option. That's psychological captivity. In our next video, we'll break down the final defense mechanism that keeps homeowners stuck, even when they know something is deeply wrong. Once that falls, the entire house poor mindset will collapse. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. The final defense mechanism that keeps homeowners trapped isn't financial. It's moral. This is the reason logic fails even when the truth is screamingly obvious. Most homeowners don't just believe that buying a house was a good decision. They believe it was the right decision, morally right, socially right, responsibly right. And once you've moralized a decision, questioning it feels like betraying yourself. This is where psychology completely overrides economics. Homeownership gets framed as achieving adulthood. Renting is framed as immaturity. Staying flexible is framed as being unstable. So when the reality of homeownership doesn't match the expectation, the brain doesn't adjust the model, it adjusts the story. People don't say, "This financial structure is hurting me." They say, "This is just how life is." That sentence is poison, because it completely shuts down all problem solving. Here's how this moralization works in your mind. If something is responsible, then any suffering that comes with it becomes a badge of honor. Stress means you're doing the right thing. Sacrifice means you're disciplined. The constant pressure means you're building something meaningful. This process turns your pain into proof. And when pain becomes proof that you're on the right path, escape starts to feel wrong. Now, just observe how powerful this trap is. A homeowner can clearly see their stress increasing, their savings stagnating, and their opportunities shrinking. But instead of changing course, they double down. They start saying things like, well, everyone goes through this, or this is just the price of stability, or I'll relax later. But later becomes a myth, because the underlying structure hasn't changed, only their tolerance for pain has. This is how being house poor turns into your identity. People stop saying, "My house is expensive." They start saying, "This is my responsibility." Responsibility sounds so noble, doesn't it? But responsibility without any margin, without any breathing room, is just a form of slavery. And here's the brutal truth. Many homeowners stay house poor not because they can to leave, but because leaving would shatter the story they've had told themselves. The story that they're disciplined, that they did it the right way, that they followed the rules of the game. Admitting that it's not working would mean admitting the rules themselves are flawed. And that's a deep, psychologically threatening idea. So instead of redesigning their life, people redesign their beliefs. They lower their expectations. They shrink their ambition. They normalize being exhausted all the time. They stop saying, I want more out of life. They start saying, I should be grateful for what I have. Gratitude becomes a tool for suppression. This is exactly why giving advice to house-poor homeowners doesn't work. You can show them spreadsheets. You can show them alternate scenarios. You can show them objectively better financial paths. But if their house is tied to their moral identity, your logic will never penetrate. Because you're not arguing about numbers. You're threatening their self-worth. And people will protect their sense of self-worth at all costs. Now notice something critical here. The same society that praises you for buying a home doesn't care when you burn out. No one refunds your stress. No one compensates you for your missed opportunities. No one gives you back the years you spent struggling. The applause stops the moment you sign the papers. After that, you're on your own. And this is where the internal conflict gets so much deeper. Homeowners feel trapped but can't say it out loud. Because complaining about owning a house sounds ungrateful. So they suppress it. And that suppression turns into resentment. The resentment slowly turns into numbness. That's the real emotional cost of being house poor. It's not just financial stagnation, it's emotional contraction. People become less curious, less ambitious, less alive. They don't dream big anymore. They just plan their next maintenance schedule. This isn't adulthood. It's accommodation. And accommodation kills all momentum in your life. Let's talk about the lie at the center of all of this. Stability is not the absence of movement. True stability is the ability to absorb change without breaking. A structure that demands complete rigidity just to survive is not stable. It's brittle. Real stability comes from liquidity, low fixed costs, having options, and an adaptive income. It does not come from a building. A house can support your stability, but only if it's aligned with your cash flow, not your identity. When identity leads, logic just follows behind. And that's completely backward. Most homeowners don't need more motivation. They need permission. Permission to question. Permission to admit, this doesn't feel right. This isn't actually working for me. I made this choice with incomplete information. That's not failure. That's intelligence. But as long as homeownership remains a moral issue, the problem of being house poor will remain invisible. Thanks for watching.